brand advocacy and like the whole word of mouth marketing piece, like we know it's so powerful, but yet there's still so many brands out there that just don't quite know how to get it right. They think they're doing elements of it, but actually it's just not advocacy in its true core.
I think because everything nowadays is paid for. And I think from an outsider's perspective, and again, this gives me strength in the job that I do, in that I haven't come from those traditional roots. I can look at it from a customer perspective, from an outsider perspective, and say, actually, what is going to get me talking about this brand? What do I look for in a brand when I'm purchasing? Not just, well, you know, we need this pillar and this content. Yes, that's great. But the reality is very different.
Have you ever wondered why some brands grow exponentially, building legions of passionate fans that live and die by their logos, and some, well, don't? I do, all the time, and that's probably because I'm a massive brand nerd, but I believe there's a secret sauce at the core of every remarkable brand, a formula that sparks the growth of passionate communities of superfans, building a business and a reputation that will last for years to come. My name is Paul Archer, and I'm a specialist in brand advocacy and word of mouth, having consulted for hundreds of brands on a topic.
Hey, it's Verity here, your co-host of the Building Brand Advocacy podcast.
In this podcast, we tap into the greatest marketing minds in the world, as they share the exact tactics and strategies used to build the world's greatest brands, dropping actionable insights every brand builder can apply.
We've got some incredible guests coming up, sharing insights and tips that can truly shift the marketing landscape. If you want to be the first to hear, make sure you hit that follow button. The more people following the show, the bigger and better we can make it. So if you're loving what you hear, don't forget to follow and spread the word. Thanks again for listening. It really means a lot. I hope you enjoy this next episode.
It's time to learn and build brand advocacy.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Building Brand Advocacy. Today I'm joined by Leah, the Chief Brand Officer at Jaws, and I'm super excited to chat to you today, Leah. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
I would love to hear more about the brand before we kind of like just get in, because you launched you're not even launched yet.
Nope.
But everything started to kick off in around October of last year.
Yes. So actually, it's been super fast moving. So this idea only came alive kind of mid last year. And then October, I was the first one in. And since then, we have been ramping up like crazy. It's been a whirlwind. And then we launched on the 30th of May.
Wow.
So yeah, very quick.
Yeah.
Very quick.
We'll get into a little bit more about you sort of like the concept of the brand in a bit, but I suppose you're currently leading the global brand and marketing vision for like this new retail concept, and it's designed to disrupt.
Yes.
What exactly does disruption look like for you guys, and you know what is going to make it so different?
So disruption is exactly what it says on the tin for me, from my perspective. Everyone always says, you know, we're launching this new brand, whether it be T-shirts or it's, I don't know, athleisure wear, in this case, jewelry. And everyone says they're going to disrupt the space. What I mean by disruption is completely flipping it on its head and doing something completely different to what anyone else does in the market, and really being authentic with that and living and breathing it. So we're in the process at the moment of really kind of shaping the way that the brand will look to everybody and feel to everybody, and just do the opposite of what everyone would expect.
Wow.
Yeah.
It sounds super exciting.
Yeah.
And I suppose like, you know, disruption, I don't know, would you call it a bit of a buzzword for some people?
It is.
Yeah.
Everyone uses it.
Yeah.
Everyone says they're disrupting.
Can you kind of like just give us a little sneak peek into kind of like how you're leaning into it, so it isn't just this like buzzword concept?
Yeah, sure. So for us, it's all about the feeling and the emotion behind how you perceive our brand, and also what you can gain from our brand. And I usually hear a lot of people just talking about either community or their product.
Yeah.
Really, we want to innovate this space. And rather than take a product and try and sell it and make it fit you, we're actually listening to what the gap is in the market in real time and completely changing the product to suit you in your life in a really organic way. So disruption, yes, it is a buzzword, but you have to live and breathe it. And that's what we're doing, what we're aiming for.
What are some of the ways that you're kind of doing that at the moment?
So we have a few concepts that we're launching with, one of which is something we're calling memory stacks. So in every way that you kind of layer your jewelry, you tend to, usually when you think of memory, when it comes to jewelry, actually, I'll talk about this. It tends to be down to a milestone, whether it's a birth or an engagement, and you have like a ring to signify that, or you have, I don't know, a graduation present. Every day we layer our jewelry. I wear lots of different jewelry all day, every day, and I can see that you do.
Yeah.
But it might not have the same relevance to you. Like what you might usually have one piece of jewelry that you wear. We want to create a space where every single piece of jewelry in our store, whether it be earrings, necklaces, bracelets, can be layered and signify a memory, whether it's a small memory or a big memory. And the way that we're designing the product and the innovation behind the way that some of the clasps, for example, click onto the jewelry, or the way that you can change it up for 1 minute wearing it as a ring, the next minute wearing it as an earring.
Cool.
Really kind of innovate that. So every single piece that you wear and layer can be attributed to a memory.
Yeah, I love that whole concept of like tapping into the memory thing. I think pretty much every piece of jewelry I've got on right now signifies either a memory or something that like means something to me in some way.
100%.
And when it's interesting because like thinking about it, like even when I go away or if I'm doing something in particular that I'm going to feel a bit nervous or anxious about, I need a certain piece of jewelry on me so I can feel close to it, because it obviously represents either a person or, like I said, like a meaning or something.
Even down to fashion-led jewelry. People tend to purchase it because they love the look of it and they think, oh, that would go great with an outfit. But actually, if they really kind of look into it, it's actually much more, there's a feeling behind that. I want to buy that because I feel like I would look great in that. So really kind of touching into that and leaning into it, I think is a space that is actually quite often overlooked when it comes down to it.
Okay. And obviously, so you're now with Jules, but your career is quite impressive, and I think also kind of shows that there's not just like a one way to a certain position. Like, can you just take us back a little bit, because you've been from sort of combat medical,
another lifetime,
to sort of like skincare specialist, and you know, obviously you've founded a brand, and now, like I said, you're with Jules. Like, just give us a little bit of a brief kind of history tour of your career.
I'm like a cat with 9 lives. I never went the traditional way into a career. I didn't go to university. I actually left school not knowing what I wanted to do. I have a military family, so it felt like a natural step for me to kind of go down that route. And I was 16. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I started life in the military as a combat medic, and then I found, within a couple of years of doing that probably wasn't my calling. It was a great experience, but not really something I wanted to continue as a long-term approach. I then moved into eventually into skincare and tapping into my medical experience from a skin perspective and about making women, especially women, feel great in their skin, and specialized more in concerns, whether it be acne, aging, body concerns. So I opened up a clinic, and how that kind of evolved into me opening a retail brand of my own was so many of my clients were saying, this skincare world, it's just so confusing. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I wish someone could just do it for me. So I started thinking about that, and I actually created a product where skincare was infused inside of it. So you could sleep with it and effectively do your routine while you sleep. And then that evolved over time, and I commercialized it and created clothing that would help with different concerns as you wear it. So suddenly I was immersed in this retail world. Didn't really know what I was doing. To be honest with you, I'd never worked, I'd worked in retail, on shop floors, but I never ever had the operational side of it. So I had to learn really, really fast. Luckily, I have a lot of contacts in retail, so I was able to tap into that, and I had a great mentor.
Yeah.
And I found that the demand for the product was huge. So I was able to scale really quickly and get investment. So then I went into opening stores. And that in itself is just a whole another world.
Yeah.
It's completely different to just online retailing. It's bricks and mortar is just another beast. So I learned super quick. And we started scaling globally. Actually, 50% of my customer base was based in the US.
Yeah.
So I was able to kind of get experience on a global scaling capacity really quickly. So I had that brand. Everything was going great. And then I decided, I had an offer too good to turn down effectively, because, as with all things, when you own a retail brand, you constantly need investment, you constantly need money. And with team, and when you're doing it on your own, it's really, really tough.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity to sell a portion of it and move into this. And that's what I've done. So yes, albeit it's not a traditional route into what you would classically see a chief brand officer having come from, but actually I'm proof that you don't need to have been to university, started off as an assistant and moved up, through the ranks in a steady paced time. I think if you are switched on enough, you know what you're doing, you learn quickly and you can adapt, you can take those skills and utilize it in any industry, as long as you're really, really focused and prepared to put the work in.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say was kind of like one sort of like leadership skill or principle that you've taken, even from like the military days right through to now, in terms of like what's helped you in sort of brand building, I suppose?
The biggest thing I would say to anybody starting a brand is you need to be able to work under pressure. And honestly, doesn't come easily to a lot of people. Coming from the military, I learned to work in chaos.
Yeah. And
constantly adapt and change your thinking on a momentary basis. A lot of people don't actually like to do that. And it's a really hard skill to find in people. I think taking that into brand building is super important, because things go wrong on a daily basis. So being able to work under pressure is a big, big part of that.
Yeah. I mean, the brand that you founded, I mean, such an innovative concept, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of like, I'm guessing, is there any other brands that are doing that? So
no,
it's a product category that you've kind of created.
Yeah.
So impressive just alone. But in terms of like building trust in a product category that doesn't exist, like what would you say is kind of like the approach to doing that?
Well, absolutely bringing advocates on board from an early stage.
Yeah.
That is the biggest piece of advice I can give to anyone trying to build a new category.
Yeah.
You really have to, when you're creating something that doesn't exist in the marketplace, the first thing you need to do is look for the people that engage when you talk about it. Look for the people that get excited by it and have them become your advocates.
Yeah.
The best thing ever is word of mouth over anything. And so if you can get people on board with your idea, it will quickly move.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to really kind of move the needle in the direction you need it to go in.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we 100% agree with all of that, but yeah. I still think today, like, it's still, I don't know, I was just talking about it earlier, I think brand advocacy and like the whole word of mouth marketing piece, like we know it's so powerful, but yet there's still so many brands out there that just don't quite know how to get it right. They think they're doing elements of it, but actually it's just not advocacy in its true core.
I think because everything nowadays is paid for.
Yeah.
And I think from an outsider's perspective, and again, this gives me strength in the job that I do, in that I haven't come from those traditional routes. I can look at it from a customer perspective, from an outsider perspective, and say, actually, what is going to get me talking about this brand?
Yeah.
What do I look for in a brand when I'm purchasing?
Yeah.
Not just, well, you know, we need this pillar and this content. Yes, that's great, but the reality is very different. So I think it can be missed very easily in bigger brands or even smaller brands that think that there's a certain way of doing something and they rely on content or paid influencers to really spread the word.
Yeah.
But honestly, you start with 10 people that believe in your brand, they're going to tell 10 people.
Yeah.
And then they're going to tell 10 people. And that can spread much quicker and more authentically than paying for influencers and trying to find a community online.
Yeah, 100%. How do you sort of like identify those first 10 advocates?
Talk to everyone. Network, engage, and even if you feel like you're boring everybody, talk, because I can guarantee there'll be one person that you speak to each day that you'll just see it. They'll ask you questions. Their eyes will light up when you're talking about it. And if you can get them as excited in it as you are, you found that person.
Yeah.
And you might not see any benefit from that straight away. But a week down the line, I've had people come into my store crying. And I make no exaggeration, crying because I've changed their lives in the product that I've sold them because, you know, for whatever it's done for them.
I can just imagine that conversation that they're then telling like their friends and family. And,
exactly. They learnt that from somebody coming into my store and us spending 5 minutes with that person and explaining the brand and the concept to them, getting them involved. That you just have to get people involved and talk.
Yeah, I had that scenario. I was actually at I was just at like the gym and I had a water bottle with like a brand name on it, and this girl came over and she was like, what do you think about this brand? Because I keep getting hit by their ads over and over. And I was like, I love it and it works, and it, you know, really sort of like hyped them up. And she went and bought it even though she'd been seeing all these ads for, and she didn't know me. We were just in the same exercise class together for an hour and that's it. So
it's crazy. And she will now tell five other people.
Yeah.
And then they will start telling people.
Yeah.
So that really is the quickest and best way to build advocacy for your brand.
And then let's take those first 10 people. Have you got any sort of like tactics in terms of like how you're nurturing them to, you know, obviously keep that experience going so that they stay?
People like to feel involved, I've noticed. And so just asking them questions about what they think about certain elements of your brand. Like, hey, you know, I was thinking about doing this product. Like, would you buy that? Do you believe in this concept? What do you think of this tagline? So many brands and people think that that's a big no-no. Like they should be telling the customer, this is what we stand for.
Yeah.
This is what we're about. No, you should actually flip it on its head. Your customers should be telling you how you make them feel, and then you lean into it. And so that's, for me, the best way of kind of leaning into that. You need to get them involved.
Yeah.
Get them answering the questions for you. Yeah.
We've said it so many times, have that two-way dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's surprising how often it's missed. Everyone says they're doing it, but really they're not. They're asking the question, not hearing it.
Yeah. How have you found having that two-way dialogue? Like not how, but like where are you having those conversations? I know that might sound like a really stupid question, but
no, not at all. And you know, it's tough before you launch a brand because, you know, until you launch, really, you can't just go out to a community online and until you start building that on social media. And even then, you know, it's hard for people to really understand what you're about before they can visually see what you're about.
Yeah.
So I tend to start like, I guess you would call them focus groups, really close-knit friends, family, colleagues, people that I've worked with before, other people that I know that create brands. Start asking those questions, start building that hype. And then it's like when you know, if you were starting a brand in your bedroom, the first thing you would do is get your friends and family to like and follow and share, right? So it's the same thing. Just on a different scale.
Yeah.
So starting in that space, you know, every little helps.
Yeah.
And then when you start to launch things and start to take off, whether, you know, you launch your socials, you launch your website, then you can start tapping into community and really building that and learning from what you've heard and kind of putting that to them and saying, do you believe in this stranger that I've never met? What do you think?
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to Jules.
Yeah.
So it's scaling globally from the start. How do you kind of go about building a brand that feels culturally sort of like resonant but consistent across all the different markets?
Yeah. So number one, I will say we're very, very fortunate in that our founder and owner, Brett Blundy, is a retail guru. He has done this a million times over. He owns some fantastic brands. So, we really do have that we can tap into. I think when you're launching and scaling a brand globally from day one and making sure that it stays resonant across all touch points, you really have to start with one area that that you're really good at, for example, bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
And then think, right, how does that touch all the other points within the business, whether it's online, whether it's customer, whether it's social, whatever it may be, and bring that belief and culture through. Team is the number one thing. Everyone in your team has to live and breathe what you're doing, and really believe in it. So number one, team. Then you push that out, and you've got to stay consistent. Consistency is key.
Yeah. And you've obviously just mentioned bricks and mortar. For me, I feel like the retail space in sort of like the real life retail space is changing just as fast as like the digital space. And I sort of wanted to just tap into sort of like you've emphasized that Jules is about creating an experience, and it's about sort of like the in-store, the online experience as well, and bringing that all together. Like, just how are you what does that look like for Jules now?
So for us, we are truly omni-channel. So everything you can do in store, you can do online, and vice versa. The number one thing that you need to be able to do in today's landscape, especially if you're opening bricks and mortar, is create that theatre and that reason why for people to come in.
Yeah.
We will never be just another store pushing a product. When you come in, we want you to this sounds so cliche, but we want you to step into our universe and then feel and smell everything that all about us the minute you walk in.
Yeah.
So that comes down to team, first and foremost, living, breathing, being excited and engaged with our customers the minute you walk through the door. The smell that you can smell that you come in, that's us, right? The sound, everything is a touch point.
Yeah.
And the same with online. We want to move our retail spaces online as well. So we have like Jaws Radio that we're going to be launching, which people can listen to what's going on in our stores, with what our soundtrack is, what our community are loving at the moment. And so that's just one area. Incorporating in-store services and being able to relay that online again. So everything now has to be fully omni-channel and an experience in itself, not just another place to buy product.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's what's going to get people when they're in store to talk about it online as well. And it kind of like, it works both ways, doesn't it? In that sense.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay. I want to talk about scaling at speed, because I think this is something that, obviously you've got such expertise in.
Yeah.
First of all, what is one thing brands underestimate about launching quickly?
They don't realize how much money it takes and how much work it takes. They always underestimate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in terms of how does that sort of like, in terms of teams and your systems, what is it that you need from day one? So
again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but you need teams of people that fully believe in what you are trying to achieve. Because without that, you will not launch a successful brand. So team first and foremost. Systems, you need to get the logistics right. Especially if you're scaling at speed, and all of the systems that you see in the background that the customer doesn't see, so that the experience for them is seamless.
Yeah.
It's actually really, really tough to get right, because people think it's as easy as just setting up a website, and as long as you can ship to the customer, it's fine. But actually, it's everything that you kind of don't see. Whether it be a seamless customer service experience, who's going to manage that?
Yeah.
Is it going to be a consistent voice? what's going to happen if, you know, your stock doesn't arrive in store? How are you going to fulfill it?
Yeah.
Everyone really does underestimate that. And they, you know, there's such an emphasis these days as well. What I'll also say is you see these brands launch and they're like, we sold out in 5 minutes. That's actually really poor planning. It is. That's not good. It's actually not a good thing to say.
That's very true.
I don't believe that is, because in my opinion, then you've completely underestimated what impact you're going to have.
Yeah.
And now you're struggling to find stock.
Yeah.
I know a lot of brands do that for a bit of a market kind of, they haven't sold out, but you know, they say they do, but really it does more harm than good in my eyes. And if I'm investing in a brand, I'm not investing in a brand that can't manage their inventory and stock properly.
Yeah.
So it's these little things that, you know, you really need to take notice of, especially if you want to scale globally fast.
Yeah. I want to go back to the teams thing, because obviously you've mentioned it a couple of times. And I think for us, like, you know, the whole employee advocacy is, like you've said, it's just as important as your customers and you know, your advocates out there in the real world. Obviously, from a starting point, there's obviously certain things you can do. And would you feel like it's a bit easier to kind of get that buy-in from day one? Or is there tactics that a brand that is currently existing, they've already got a team and feel like they need to gain some more buy-in from their employees? Like what would be some of your advice or tactics to do that?
Yeah, you know, I think it's an interesting one you actually say that, because when you're a startup and you hire your first team members, the first thing you do is invest a lot of time in them, right? Because you want them on board. If you're just a one-man band and you're starting a brand, or if you're like us, you have 20 people in an office, but you know, everything is new to everyone.
Yeah.
That sense of collaboration and engagement, you don't have levels, you don't have hierarchy. Everyone is rolling their sleeves up. So it's easy to build that brand advocacy with your employees quickly, because you're all on the same mission. You're all on the same wavelength. Bigger brands, I guess it's much harder because you get caught up in the everyday.
Yeah.
You have a lot of, you know, hierarchy, people that feel disconnected. My biggest piece of advice would be to spend time with everyone. Nobody is better than anyone. Kind of forget your job titles, because who cares about job titles, right? It's everyone is as important as each other, and you need to spend the time with them, keep them engaged, and invest in those people, and they will naturally be your biggest brand advocates. For sure.
And I suppose, like, I mean, the one thing that we get is like time poor as well. And like, you know, sort of the investing in the education in employees about the product. Like, again, if you know, if we were time poor, what can they do?
That should be the number one thing that anyone does in a business, that should be the number one priority, investing the time in your employees. Everyone is time poor.
Yeah.
But you make the time for what matters the most, right?
Yeah.
You know, you pick up a call from your husband or your wife. So you should be able to pick up a call from an employee, or invest that time into them, in educating them about product, brand, whatever it may be. Because it's when you don't do that, you see brands start to slip. And you see standards start to fall. And it could start off really, really small. For example, in a store, you know, you might see rubbish on the floor. You might see product not straight and nicely merchandised. That's just the beginning.
Yeah.
And a lot of people might think, well, that's not that big of a deal. You know, when you have 1,000 stores globally, how can you manage that?
Yeah.
Brett Blundy is proof in the pudding that you can manage that. He has about 20 million brands. He has over 3,000 stores globally, and he still does store visits every day. He knows everyone's name. He walks into that store and he'll know a part-timer and say, "Hi, Zoe, how are you? Tell me what's going on in the store." And just that interaction.
Yeah, can you imagine?
They go away and they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe Brett spoke to me.
Yeah.
He knows my name." And that re-engages them and it ignites their fire. I think everybody should be able to do that in their brands.
Yeah, so incredibly powerful.
Yeah,
yeah,
it really is.
That actually gave me a little goosebump when you said, like, you say hello to Zoe and ask, like, you know, part-timer, what's going on and stuff. Like,
he's honestly, I'm so fortunate. He is a big reason why I'm in the position I'm in today, because I've been lucky enough to have him as my mentor.
Yeah.
And he's come from nothing, and he's made this incredible global impact in the retail world. He's probably the biggest retail investor globally. And the fact that he can go into a store, whether it's in Paris, London, or South Africa, and he will know a part-timer's name without even having to ask.
Yeah.
And he has hundreds of thousands of team working for him. We never say staff, it's always team. That to me is something that I really hold true to myself, and I'll always maintain that through my working career.
Love it.
Yeah. There's a reason why he's so successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to know the first one to this question, but what are the non-negotiable steps that you were taking sort of like the first 90 days of this whole concept of scaling internationally?
Yeah. So team.
Yeah.
Logistics.
Yeah.
Money.
Okay.
Get those three things in place. It will always cost more than you expect. So just have a bucket of money available to you, if you can, to be able to account for the, I don't know, what would you say, the things that happen that we can't control.
Yeah.
Team is the most important thing of all.
Mm-hmm.
The right people at the right time. And logistics, make sure that you are set up to scale from day one. Even if you felt like you were, if you were a brand and you're just opening in the UK, and nobody starts a business thinking, well, I'm sure some people do, but nobody really starts a business not thinking they're going to make it big, right? And they're going to globalize. But then the biggest downfall in brands, which we see a lot, is they're not set up for scalability.
Yeah.
And so really having a hold on that from day one is key.
Yeah.
For sure.
What have been some of the brands that have stood out to you that are sort of, that have also followed in these kind of footsteps?
I think, oh God, there's so many at the moment. And for me, probably the most notable brand that have taken my attention is, I'm going to say Skims.
Yeah.
And the reason I say Skims is not because of the Kardashian powerhouse that's behind it, even though that helps. They really came in and innovated a space. Before, you would go and buy your Spanx and be done with it, right? But they actually really innovated because they created shapewear for everybody and anybody for any occasion, whether it was a backless dress, someone with, like an amputee or disability, and they catered for that. And then they were able to scale globally really, really quickly. They didn't have fancy packaging. They really didn't have a fancy product, but they had a product that people wanted. And a lot of people don't really buy into the Kardashian brand, which is why a lot of their brands are just kind of stagnant. This brand, for some reason, worked, and they were able to scale very quickly. So they're probably the most notable brand for me. And another one would be Glossier.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Because they innovated retail.
Yeah.
In my eyes, they did something completely different. They, the white lab coats and the complete mobile POS solution.
Yeah.
There was no counter. There was no, who else was doing that? Nobody.
They were also one of the first ones, right, to sort of like use their, I hate saying real people, but, sort of like use, sort of their customers. I think they were one of the first ones to do it. Like it started off on their blog, didn't it?
Yeah.
And really showcasing, I don't want to say real people. I hate that term.
I know, but it's true, right? It's so true.
Yeah.
And 1,000%. That to me is the power of brand advocacy. You really get people involved and they shine for you. And now their brand is worth billions. It's incredible.
What do you think brands get wrong when it comes to advocacy?
Really not kind of standing for what, they try to stand for.
Okay.
And speaking a lot, prioritizing things like content over community in a really non-authentic way. You see it you see it happen quite often. And it's quite sad, because actually it's a product you probably would buy, but immediately you get turned off if you see certain types of content, or certain, you just know it's like hashtag ad on everything.
Yeah.
It's like a turn off.
How did, sorry to interrupt, I just thought about like what you said there about the focusing on content over community. And I think, do you think this is down to the fact that, you know, let's just take social media, for example, as one space in the digital world. Like, is there just content eating machines? Like, it feels like it's never going to end.
No.
So I kind of understand where, you know, there's probably pressure coming on. We need more content. We need more content. We need more content. Like, how do they get that balance of like, because again, I think community is a buzzword.
Yeah.
And there's been some huge conversations this year about what does actually community mean. And, you know, we're now saying community management isn't just answering DMs or answering comments on, you know, your Instagram posts. It's so much more deep rooted than that.
Yeah.
So again, that's the long-term strategy. So how do we balance that community long-term piece with the short-term, we need content, so many?
Yeah. It's a hard one, and I can see why it can be overlooked, because like you say, it's like content.
Yeah.
We need content every single day. And then what happens is your authenticity has gone.
Yeah.
Or you're just trying to jump on a trend, and that trend doesn't mean anything to your brand.
I've been talking about this a lot recently.
Yeah. You look at some content and you're like,
why have you done that? Yeah.
I don't really understand that. Why did you create that? Doesn't make sense. So I think as long as you keep at the forefront of your mind what your mission is and what really does mean to your community, not forgetting the people that you've already nurtured and alienating them, I think that's how you kind of keep on track, and not just jumping on a trend for the sake of trend. I like to think of it as, you know, like if you have your personal Instagram page with all your friends and family on there, you may have like 200-300 followers, or whatever it may be. You don't post every day, but when you post, you probably get like 100 of those 200 people like and comment on your posts.
Yeah.
So why do brands think that by creating 20 pieces of content a day is like the key? No, like sit back, like relax a little bit. Your brand's not going anywhere. Your community aren't going anywhere if they believe in you. Maybe create one piece of content every day to launch every other day. Your community is still going to be there to like and follow and share.
I think this is the big problem though, is the fact that we're copying what we think is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And actually it's like, who has set this playbook for what we should be posting and when and how often? And it feels like, and I get it, because, you know, working in a brand, you feel like, you know, you see your competitor and you kind of get that panic, don't you? Like, oh, they're doing all this stuff on social, you know, but actually you're right. Brands need to just sort of like rip up this imaginary social media playbook and set their own.
100%.
It's quite frustrating actually, because I don't know where it's all come from. But
no. And you see, you know, I actually have a lot of insight into a lot of brands that you would think are doing immensely well based on the amount of content they're peddling, and the amount of events they're doing, and, you know, all these glitz and like shiny smoke and mirrors. They're not profitable. They're spending money for the sake of spending money.
Yeah.
They could completely scale that back and still have some level of authenticity. Whilst remaining profitable. I think, you know, it's a sad reality that we live in, and I think it's down to, you know, we're kind of no better. I sit there on TikTok at night, like scrolling. I'm terrible for that, but I don't believe it's the way forward for a brand to just constantly subscribe to peddling content if it's not authentic. So yeah, that's a really good point you make. Like, you look at the competitors, right? And you think, oh, look how much they're doing. We need to keep up.
Yeah.
I actually don't really like to look at competitors. Obviously, you know where your brand is positioned. You know typically who your competitors are, and you probably kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I don't look at what they're doing and follow. If anything, I would like to do the complete opposite at all times, every time, to keep it fresh and exciting. People are not interested in copycats.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
I think we're becoming too wise to a lot of things.
Yeah.
And even what you said earlier, just now actually, about brands that are kind of investing in all these community events. And actually the conversation is now going, is it actually a community event?
It's not, it's an influencer event. Yeah, it's not. Let's be honest, right?
And then community events is now customer events. But even the customer events, are they?
Well, they're customers with a lot of followers, right? Give me Jo from Sainsbury's.
Yeah.
She's the real one.
Take Jo any day.
They're more likely to spend as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're more likely to go and tell Jane and Janet down the road, and they're going to come in and spend some money with you.
Yeah.
Because look, let's face it, we're all here to make money. You're making a business, right? It's about profit at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Authenticity is key. So that is the key.
Leah, what are you most excited about with the launch coming up?
Oh my God, there's so much. I'm really excited to see it come to life. I actually was the person that helped design the stores. I had a great team behind me that actually put the pen to paper, but everything kind of came out of my brain in terms of how it looks and feels. And so I'm really excited to see how that is kind of perceived in real life.
Yeah.
That is just incredible.
That's so exciting.
And I'm really excited for who will be our new community to see our product. Our product is insane. It's just so innovative and clever and game-changing. And I know everyone says that, but just watch this space. It's so exciting.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Leah, where can anyone find you if they wanted to get in touch?
So I have my Instagram, which is leah.b.uka, or my LinkedIn. And then jules.com will be live very, very soon. So watch this space.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That was another episode of Building Brand Advocacy, the world's top brand building podcast. To find out more about building brand advocacy and how this podcast is part of a bigger plan for our brand building cookbook, then make sure to search for Building Brand Advocacy in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that podcasts are found, and make sure that you click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks to Duel for sponsoring. To find out more, go to www.duel.tech, that's duel.tech. And on behalf of the team here at Building Brand Advocacy, thanks for listening.